Good morning in Europe and good afternoon in Indonesia. I want to warmly welcome you to today's expert exchange series, which deals with the topic navigating Indonesia's post-coal mining and energy transition. And actually, before we start the content, I would like to share with you some technicalities. So the session today will be accompanied by a Bahasa interpretation. So for those who listen to the language interpretation version of this webinar, please click on this link, or you can also scan the QR code and then simply click on the languages and select Bahasa and press the play button, okay? And for muting the original Teams audio, you need to open the settings in the Teams app. So the dots on the top right corner, and then click there on audio settings. So click there on the loudspeaker icon to mute, and then you will hear only the interpretation. Okay. So in case you use the Teams through the web browser, then you can right-click on the browser tab and then unmute the site. And there is another option as well. You can use the log through the interaction app on the phone by downloading the app using this QR code, and then simply entering the meeting code, which is IKI JET 2026. And then here you select your preferred language interpretation and then press the play button. Okay. If you have any issues for technicalities or any other technical issues, then please let us know. I am here very well supported, and yeah, hopefully we can help you with this. So welcome everybody again to this session. I'm very glad to facilitate today's expert exchange series, which is part of the IKI JET project, and IKI JET stands for Innovation Regions for a Just Transition, Just Energy Transition, and is a joint German-EU project that is implemented in 7 countries, and one of them is Indonesia. And the expert exchanges that are a series of webinars that address the knowledge and needs of key stakeholders involved in planning the just energy transition. And today we focus on Indonesia's post-coal mining and energy transition, and focus very much on the region where the shift from fossil fuels toward renewable is very relevant, as one of the nation's largest coal-producing hub, which is East Kalimantan, right? So mining has basically accounted for nearly 80% of the GDP historically, and by 2050, the region is projected to lose nearly 70,000 coal mining jobs. And the transition is there not merely a technical adjustment, but rather a profound socioeconomic restructuring that risks deepening existing structural inequalities. And basically a critical challenge in this transition is the reorganization of inequality, whereby the burdens of the shift are redistributed onto households, falling disproportionately on women and also marginalized groups. And against this background, so this expert exchange aims to raise awareness of these intersecting inequalities, discuss critical gaps as well, and showcase transformative solutions. So the objective is more to raise the awareness, like on the gendered impacts of coal transitions, but deepen as well the understanding of how mine closure reorganizes rather than resolves inequality. And of course, also to discuss opportunity and the challenges in diversification and land use. So the speakers for today are from the Dala Institute, Giovanni Asriningrum and Nitia Agustini Kala Ayu. The Dala Institute is a research institute that conducts evaluations and technical assistance, integrating social environmental dimensions, and also amplifies diverse global South voices. Then we have from the SMERU Institute, Mohammed Shukri and Henning Wikan. The SMERU Institute is an independent institution that conducts research and policy studies, and SMERU has been very much on the forefront of research on poverty and inequality. Then we welcome on the panel Dr. Diva Ayu, Laxyamyadi, Jana Priyati. I hope I pronounced it well. She is working at the Ministry of Women's Empowerment and Child Protection. And another panelist is Dr. Mia Siskavati, who's a researcher and lecturer from the University of Indonesia. My name is Sibel Ersoy. I will guide you through this event, and I also have here a support from my colleague, Cecilia Bonnet, who works with me at the Wuppertal Institute. We are based in Germany and are a research institutions. Before we jump to the content, just a few words on the project itself, IKI JET. So this project is commissioned by the International Climate Initiative, IKI, of the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action, jointly financed by the EU Commission. And the objective is to support and accelerate just transitions, just energy transitions. And we have several activities in different countries, and one of them is in Indonesia. And among the implementation organizations are GIZ, who are also here present today, Khan International ISD, also present, ILO's Solidarity Center, and APIDA. And this project will end in January 2027. And very much in a nutshell, IKI JET supports developing plans for a just transition, and is based on 3 components. And we will present 2 main studies that were developed within the frame of the first component, the interregional platform, and the second component, which is the Indonesian component. Yes, and we will hear as an next a joint presentation by researchers from the Dala and the SMERU Institute. So speakers will be Nitia Ayu, who's a researcher at the Dala Institute. She's a social and sustainability enthusiast, and her research focus is on just transition, climate change policy and adaptation, and also gender inclusion. Then we have from SMERU's side our colleague Henning Wikan, who's a researcher with a focus on political economy and specialized in gender, environment, and civil society issues. And as well, present today from the Dala Institute is Giovanni Desi. She's a researcher with over 10 years of experience, and her main focus is on feminist political ecology, feminist political economy, and intersectional perspectives. And last but not least is our colleague represented by SMERU, who is Mohammed Shukri, is a senior researcher with a focus on governance, decentralization, and community empowerment. So over to you, colleagues.
All right, thank you, Sibel. for the introduction. I believe Nitya will help in sharing this screen for our presentation. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and also good evening to everyone joining us from different parts of the world. We thank you for taking the time to be part of this discussion. And it is a huge pleasure for us to share this session with policymakers, practitioners, and of course, the experts who are interested in the opportunities and challenges of energy transition in coal-dependent regions. My name is Ning Wikan, but you can call me Wikan, and I am a researcher from the SMERU Research Institute. And today, my colleague Nitya from Dala Institute and I will share two complementary studies conducted by SMERU and Dala with support from the Wuppertal Institute. And while the studies focus on different aspects of the transition, they share a common objective, and that is to understand what it takes for coal-dependent regions to move toward a more diversified and inclusive development pathway. And with that, let me begin by briefly introducing the context of both studies. So the key here is that understanding a transition beyond coal requires looking at both the policy landscape and the practice at the community levels. So to capture these different dimensions, SMERU and Dala conducted two complementary studies in East Kalimantan. The first study, led by SMERU, assesses the post-coal regional economic transformation from a gender-responsive perspective. And our analysis focuses more on East Kalimantan at the provincial level. And the second study, conducted by Dala Institute, explores what transition means at the community level. And the research was conducted in Kertabuana village. It's one of the villages in East Kalimantan. And to help frame our discussion, I would now like to hand over to my colleague Nitya, who will introduce the concept of gender and intersectional inequalities in coal transition. Over to you, Nitya.
Yeah, thank you, Wikan. I hope you can hear my voice now. So just for a brief of introduction, how we trying to understand our research, we use the lens of intersectional inequalities, and also we use also the justice principles to understand the dynamic in the coal mining transition. So the first is we use the intersectional inequalities frames that we understand that there are diverse experience on the socioeconomic position of the communities when we learn about how the communities, variety stakeholders experience transition. And we trying to see the experience based on the gender, the socioeconomic class, also based on the age, are they young, teenager, also adult and elderly community, and then their migration experience. And all this intersection, socioeconomic position, it's also related regarding their resource access. Do they have land or they're landless, or they have access for capital? And also we see the context of the livelihood security. Do they have permanent jobs, or working as the informal workers, or they are a housewife or other source of livelihood? And then also we see how is the access for this community on the participation and also decision making. And after we see all these variety backgrounds and their intersectional context, we trying to understand how is post-mining just transition context and what has been done there. For example, we see the context of the redistribution, representation, recognition, and reparation. So in the redistribution transition, we see who bears the cost of the transition and who captures, who get the benefits of from this transition. In the context of representation, we try to understand who has authority to define transition and for whom, who is the receiver of these transition programs. And also, we see the context of recognition and, for example, whose labor counts in the transition, and also who got benefit from it, and who's also harms got harm from the transition happening. And the last one is we see the reparation, like what is owed for historical traceability disposition, like do past injustices addresses by the current transition. That's the context of the framework. And now we go to the findings, yeah, from SMERU first. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Nitya. And I will continue. So, looking at the structure, if we look at East Kalimantan's economy, it remains strongly anchored in extractive and commodity-based sectors. So although the contribution of the mining and quarrying sector to the GRDP or the provincial economy has gradually declined, over time, but it continues to play a dominant role in generating economic activity beyond the GRDP because the sector supports a wider economic ecosystem from employment to other relevant industries like transportation and logistics, in which we can see how it is reflected through the coal-related infrastructure as coal terminals here. And also, alongside mining, another sector emerged as another important pillar, and that is the palm oil sector, because while its contribution to the provincial GRDP is considerably smaller compared to mining, but its footprint is substantial because the sector, the plantation, accounts for around 89% of the total plantation land at the province. And also it directly employs around 12% of the regional workforce. Slide, please. Now, let's turn to the landscape of women economic participation in Kalimantan. So, from the educational profile, we have already seen that women in East Kalimantan have made significant progress over the past decade. The share of the women completing senior secondary education as well as tertiary education increased from 2015 to 2024. But so these figures, under normal circumstances, we would expect such gains to be accompanied by stronger labor market participation as well as greater economic opportunities for women, right? However, the evidence in the next slide suggests a more complex reality. Next slide. So, despite improvements in the educational profile, the women's participation in the labor market has remained relatively low. So between 2016 to 2024, the FLFPR, the female labor force participation rate in East Kalimantan, consistently remained below the national average for women. At the same time, the male labor force participation rate was more than twice the level observed among women, and that is above 80%, compared to the FLFPR, which hover at around 40%. The nature of the women's employment is also important to consider. So although the gap between formal and informal employment narrowed over time and nearly closed by 2024, women were consistently more likely to be engaged in informal work throughout the same period. As we also observe that in the informal sector, more than 70% were on-account workers, which means that they operated small-scale businesses without employing either paid or unpaid workers, which suggests that entrepreneurship often serves as a strategy for generating income when formal employment opportunities are limited, instead of functioning as a pathway to business expansion or upward economic mobility. The next slide. So as discussed earlier, women in East Kalimantan have made significant gains in education, but these gains have not translated into comparable outcomes in economic participation. And with that, our findings suggest that multiple barriers, from structural, social, and institutional barriers, continue to shape women's economic opportunities. So at the household level, women's engagement in productive work is often perceived as a supplementary activity rather than as a long-term career pathway, while domestic and caregiving responsibilities remain their primary responsibility. And this perception has important implications. So even when women-led MSMEs, they receive entrepreneurship training or other kinds of capacity building support, their ability and motivation to expand their businesses can be constrained by limited support within the household. As our informants highlighted, that decisions related to business growth or women's time allocation for their own enterprises often require negotiation with family members, particularly their husbands. And over time, these dynamics can weaken women's confidence to pursue their own economic aspirations and limit their ability to scale up economic activities. And these barriers are further reinforced by labor market structures in other key sectors, such as palm oil and mining. So in the palm oil plantation and mining sectors, the local communities often face difficulties accessing higher skilled and better paid positions, because these jobs are frequently perceived as requiring technical or managerial competencies that local workers are assumed not to possess. So consequently, local workers are more commonly concentrated in physically demanding roles, which tend to be less accessible to women. Additionally, under volume-based payment systems, wages are commonly paid to male workers, even when women contribute substantially to the production activities. And this practice renders women's labor less visible and reinforces existing inequalities in income and recognition. And similar patterns can also be observed in the mining sector. So employer practices and workplace norms can contribute to women's exclusion from employment opportunities, because some companies perceive the statutory obligations related to maternity and menstrual leave as already has been stipulated in law number 13 year 2003 and law number 4 year 2024 actually. This statutory obligations are perceived as additional operational constraints, particularly for positions involving shift work or with limited staffing arrangements. So rather than adapting workplace policies, employers may choose to recruit fewer women. Next. Now, so far, we have discussed the barriers that continue to shape women's participation in productive economic activities in East Kalimantan. The next question is how these issues are reflected in East Kalimantan's broader economic transformation agenda. So, for the context, the region already has a relatively clear economic transformation strategy at present. And at its core, their strategy is built around two main strategies. Those are diversification and commodity downstreaming. So the diversification strategy seeks to identify sectors that can gradually reduce the province's dependence on coal mining while generating new sources of growth. So the priority sectors include agriculture, forestry, fisheries, manufacturing, and tourism. And within the tourism agenda, the development is also expected to create opportunities for local MSMEs. Alongside diversification, the strategy also promotes downstreaming of selected regional commodities to increase value addition, including livestock products like cattle and poultry, tiger shrimp, as well as plantation commodities, including palm oil and cocoa. However, two important challenges remain if this strategy is expected to support a transition that is both sustainable and inclusive. So the first one relates to gender inclusion. The current strategy focuses primarily on identifying sectors and commodities with strong growth potential beyond coal mining. However, it does not assess how women and men are currently positioned within the sectors. It also does not examine whether new opportunities are more likely to be equally accessible for both groups. So as a result, the labor force is implicitly treated as a homogeneous population, despite significant gender differences in labor market outcomes. And given that many of the existing growth sectors remain male-dominated, there is a risk that economic transformation may reinforce rather than reduce existing inequalities if gender-specific barriers are not addressed from the beginning or from the outset. And the second challenge relates to the post-mining future itself. Currently, there is no dedicated provincial roadmap, program, or policy that explicitly addresses coal mine closure or retirement. So in part, this reflects the perception that authority over mine closure primarily rests with the national government rather than the provincial ones. Consequently, the economic transformation is often framed as a response to potential future market risk rather than as preparation for clearly defined post-coal economy. And the emphasis remains on mitigating the impacts of possible declines in coal demand, rather than proactively restructuring the regional economy around a long-term transition pathway. And without clear signals regarding the future trajectory of coal production, the key actors from private sectors have limited incentives to invest in diversification, workforce reskilling, or post-mining land rehabilitation. As stated by one of our informants, was that from the private sector that said that summarized this challenge quite clearly. So while businesses are increasingly invited to contribute to discussions on diversification and future investment planning, there's a fundamental question that remains unanswered. When exactly will coal be phased down? Next. So, as East Kalimantan currently explores ways beyond coal, the challenge is not only about creating new economic opportunities, but also about ensuring that women are able to access and benefit from them. From the medium-term perspective, our findings suggest two promising pathways for expanding women's economic participation within the current strategy. The first is through strengthening women-led MSMEs, where women are already actively engaged. And the RPJMD, or the medium-term planning document in East Kalimantan, also highlights support for export-oriented MSMEs. And for women entrepreneurs, the integration into broader value chains can help increase both the economic returns and economic visibility. And the second pathway relates to downstreaming and value-added industries. Because downstreaming industries often shift employment away from output-based arrangements toward factory-based or semi-formal work environments. And such jobs are more likely to provide regular wages, clear working hours, and access to standard labor protections. And this opportunity is particularly relevant for commodities where women already have an established presence. So one example is cacao, where women are already involved in the cultivation and production activities. And building on this existing experience, women could potentially participate in higher value-added stages of the supply chain supported by the targeted skills development. Next. So looking at the policy landscape, gender equality remains relatively peripheral within East Kalimantan's broader development agenda. In the RPJMD, gender equality is not explicitly reflected in the governor's core development missions, which make the issue not a part of main performance indicators or indikator kinerja utama or IKU. This is important because these indicators typically signal the outcomes that political leaders consider most strategic and against which their performance will ultimately be assessed. And while references to women, youth, and persons with disabilities do appear, these are primarily framed within the context of human resource development and competitiveness. So the matters tend to be approached as a labor quality issue instead of a broader question of structural inequality. And at the program level, we can say that gender-related interventions remain relatively marginal. Out of the 75 provincial priority programs, only one is explicitly dedicated to gender mainstreaming and women's empowerment. And the limited prioritization is also reflected in budget allocations, since the budget dedicated to gender mainstreaming represents only around 0.05% of the total spending in the province. What's also important is that we observe that the responsibility for gender-related targets remain concentrated within the Women's Empowerment Office. Even though many of the underlying issues, such as labor force participation, fall within the mandates of other government institutions, such as the Provincial Labor Office. And finally, a similar pattern can also be observed within the legislative side of the local government, because our review found no pokok pikiran programs, that is basically proposed development priorities by the provincial parliament. We found that not one of the programs specifically addressed gender equality either. So far, my presentation has focused primarily on the policy dimensions of economic transformation in East Kalimantan. So to complement this perspective, I would like to hand over to Nitya, who will share key findings from Dala's research in Kertabuana village. Nitya, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Wikan. So we will present our case study based on our community and also stakeholder consultation. Before we go to the field, we choose Kertabuana village to represent the long-term impact of coal mining in the rural agricultural community. So for a little bit context, this village before 1980s were managed by the Kutai and Dayak indigenous community. And then in 1980s, there is a transmigration program from the national government. And there are many settlers from Bali, Lombok, and also Java in this village. And in 1980s, also there is a golden agriculture era for that area, because they can produce a large rice for supporting the area, and it's used it's called subak irrigation system from Bali that support the rice production at that time. But the major turning point occurred on 2003 when underground mining shifted to open pit mining, which is destroying Mount Malang and also the village main irrigation source. And this is also lead to the relocation and also a lot of disputes and expansion of the coal mining concessions around the village. And between 2010 until 2019, the mining increasingly dominated the landscape, with up to 80% of the rice field transferred into the corporate ownership coal mining area. And then we take the case of the company A that closed their operation in 2002, and the village has entered a post-mining transition phase. And the former mine pits are being converted into agricultural land and also reclamation for the reforestation area. And also there is a mining lakes that's also used as the primary water source for the community. Also, when we do the field work, we also use the water from the mining lake to shower and do like daily activities. And here the first finding that we got regarding the post-mining agriculture land. And the finding showing that there is a clear gap between the official narrative and also the reality on the ground that we found. For instance, the company A state that they have successfully do reclamation programs, converting former mine pits into 74 hectares of rice field. and it's distributed to 126 farmers. However, if we see the population in Kertabuana, the beneficiaries only represent only around 3% of the population, meaning that most of the residents do not get any direct benefit. And also to get access to this agriculture land, it's officially distributed through lottery. So there is a requirement that all people who can get the land should have no land before, or they don't have a rice field to do the work. And then there is a company staff that's also collaborate with the village government to do this lottery. But the challenge, there is also informal insertations, or in Indonesia we said orang titipan, which is they are have a connection with the company or with the village government who can access the land. So there is also a big role of social networks and also local power relations. So this is not only about the implementation problem, it is a justice issue, we see, because the lottery system can make exclusion appear more random, when in reality, opportunities are shaped by unequal access to power. And we also found from the previous dissemination, there is information from our local expert that there are some plots, some of the rice plots that's already sold by the beneficiaries, because poor farmers, they cannot afford to uh, provide the fertilizer or other inputs for the farming operations. And that's also raising questions about how is the long-term sustainability of these benefits. And still regarding the farming area, the finding also highlights there is a hidden cost of farming, because even though the land has been rehabilitated, some farmers told us that production costs are much higher than the normal rice fields, and they face difficult soil conditions, and also they need higher labor requirements, and also dependence on machinery. And especially for women, they particularly disadvantageous, because cultivation often requires expensive tractor service. And the question also regarding the risk of this degraded land, because the coal mining activities created the environmental degradation, but the farming household now who manage the land, they absorb the cost to make sure this land can be a productive land again after the coal mining activity. And in other words, we can say that the burden has been shifted from the company to the community, even though the company give assistance for the farmers for the first 3 years. So the question also, how about the long terms challenge on this? And there is also question regarding the contamination information, because there is no systemic and independent testing on the quality of soil, water, or the rice that produced from this land. And that's why many communities, um, they just accept the condition, even though they also still have question like, oh, is it safe enough to consume the rice from this? And also there is still question regarding the access, because this land remains owned by the company. So this program is temporary. And there's also question like, oh, how is the future of these farmers when the company want to take back the land? So there is a genuine question about how is the dependency, or is it make a new form of dependency from the local community to the companies? Another interesting findings that we find in the field, also there is a aquaculture activity in the degraded lakes, and some former mining workers, they invest their pension money or the money they have saving to have a business. And one of the idea is to have floating fish cages in the X mining lake, like in the picture here. But there is also question regarding the certificate of the ownership, because ownership certificate is very important. And but the reality now is there is gaps of the official recognition or the certificate of the ownership of the area. So even though they invest so much money, there is no guarantee they can manage this cage for long term. And also it's bring a question in the household level, when there is a business on the uh, lakes, the woman's role also quite big here, because the wife, beside doing the household chores, they also still involved in the monitoring of the cage maintenance, and also still managing the domestic responsibilities. And this is transitions showing the intensified of the reproductive and also productive labor for women, because it's not visible, but it's intensified their work in the context. And the other findings that we find also important to raise is about the female sex workers that left out entirely. And we would say that the female sex workers are the most politically marginalized groups in this research that we find, because they are not addressed as the um, beneficiaries of the transition, or they're not mentioned as the community that affected by the transition. Because the analytical point, usually the definition of the affected workers are the formal contracted workers, which is mostly people who have contract and mostly male, like my colleague from SMERU explained, while the sex workers are double excluded from the formal economy. And also there is no informal protection also for them. And we would say that it's heightened the vulnerability after the closure is a direct consequence on how the transition was defined and also how is it managed. And there are some quotes, for example, from some of the sex workers that we interview. They said like, yeah, before when there is coal mining activities, they just need to wait and they will get the client easily. But now they need to uh, go to the big road, they need to moving a lot, and they don't get enough access for health checkups like before, because they are spread everywhere. Next, it's also
I will let you finish, but 2 more minutes, please. Okay.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, there is also a discussion about how inequality also normalized by the community, especially for young people, because they grow up with the mining economic activity, and how youth is excluded from that. Yeah, maybe I will go to the recommendation, yeah, directly. So we have 6 recommendation on our findings and 2 from SMERU before. And so overall, the 1 until 3 recommendation is addressing the redistribution and also the structural framing of the transition. For example, the first is we suggest to invest more on the social and also care infrastructure for women's meaningful participation. And also the second is to build the structure for the participation to shift power, not only fill the quotas. So the forum must carry the binding decision-making authority, have a grievance mechanism, must be safe and independently monitored, and also the woman must be support to have more active participation, and also to acknowledge and begin to address the historical injustice in the past. For example, how can we repair, for example, the Subak irrigation system for the future agriculture activities? And the recommendation 4 until 6, we focus on the recognition, representation, and also the reparation. So, for example, like how can we reframe the post-mining obligation as the regulatory, not only about the corporate generosity. So the government need to oversight all the standard and the company planning on the post-mining activities and have a public information more easier to access. And also to expand the definition of affected persons beyond only formal mine workers, and also how to clarify and secure the terms of post mining land access. So it's not only short-term solution. Yeah, from my colleague from SMERU, and you can finish the presentation, yeah?
All right, thank you, Nitya. So, drawing on our analysis of economic transformation in East Kalimantan, one key conclusion emerged, and that is how gender inclusion cannot be treated as a secondary consideration if the province aims to achieve a truly inclusive transition. So based on our findings, we propose two broad policy considerations. The first one is to strengthen gender mainstreaming across governance structures. So moving forward, gender considerations should be systematically integrated into planning, budgeting, design, implementation, as well as evaluation across all provincial agencies. So in other words, gender inclusion should not be viewed solely as the responsibility of women's empowerment institutions, but as a cross-cutting development agenda. And a stronger gender mainstreaming framework would provide an important foundation for at least three more practical interventions. First is it could support the introduction of affirmative measures to increase women's participation in variety sectors. And the second is it could encourage governments and key private sector actors to review existing employment arrangements through a gender lens. So rather than focusing on fixing the women to fit the existing workplaces, attention should also be given to whether workplace structures themselves unintentionally create barriers to participation. And the third, more practical initiatives is how it could strengthen more integrated support for women-led MSMEs. And the second recommendation is the development of gender-responsive economic transformation roadmap. So in this regard, the provincial government, especially the Regional Development Planning Agency, or BAPEDA, could play a leading role in formulating a roadmap that links economic transformation objectives with gender equality outcomes. So the roadmap will be able to help clarify how diversification and downstreaming strategies can be implemented in ways that expand opportunities for women rather than reproducing existing inequalities. The next slide is that today's presentation highlighted only selected insights from both studies. So given our limited time, many important findings, analyses, and recommendations could not be discussed in detail. So we encourage for those interested in exploring the evidence further to access this Just Energy Transition Knowledge Hub website, which contain our complete reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nitya and Wikan, for your very insightful presentation. And I already seen a lot of questions in the Q&A section. Please, we will move to the question section later on. I would like to hand over now to Dr. Deva Ayu, who's a Deputy Assistant at the Ministry of Women's Empowerment and Child Protection. Her main work lays in gender mainstreaming, and she will give us insights on national policies on energy transition and discuss as well the status of gender mainstreaming and highlight gaps and opportunities. Please, Dr. Ibu Devayu, the floor is yours, and we will share your presentation from our end. Please unmute yourself first.
Sibel, can you
Yes.
see my screen?
No. I'll share the presentation if you want.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So I think you can see the presentation, and we will try to unmute Deva.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, yes. Yes, now
Okay.
it's working.
Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay. Thank you, Sibel. After the two presenters, Mrs. Henning and Mrs. Ayu, I agree. And now I want to see it from gender perspective in accordance with our duties at the Ministry of Women Empowerment and Child Protection. It's okay. That's I do presentation, the policy landscape and gender integration. Okay. Okay. Yes, next slide. Yes, our policy umbrella. That's our presidential instruction. It's number 9 of 2000 concerning gender mainstreaming. Okay, this is the main foundation for us that requires all ministry and institution, include the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, to integrated gender perspective in the planning, budgeting, implementation, monitoring, evaluation, reporting of national policy. Okay, and our commitment to net zero emission target in 2060 and just energy transition partnership. It's okay. In international partnership documents such as the GTP and ENDC, the GESI, gender equality and social inclusion aspect has begun to be mandated, yeah, as a key indicator to ensure that clean energy investment are inclusive. Okay, number 3, sector guide from the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. Yeah, together with international partners such as GIZ and UNDP, has developed various concept papers and technical guidelines on gender mainstreaming in the renewable energy sector to encourage women involvement at the decision-making, industrial, worker, and consumer level. Okay, please, the next slide. Yeah. Why is gender perspective so crucial? Yeah, we know women have a unique role. They are the most impacted group in the energy transition. Negative post-mining impact. Yeah. When the coal mines close or land is converted to the new energy project, women at the grassroots level often lose their living space, clean water source, and traditional livelihoods. And second, domestic burden and clean energy. In rural areas, women are the primary managers of household energy, such as cooking, water management, etc. Access to clean energy, such as solar panels or electric stove, directly reduces household time burdens and improve their health. Active subject, not statistical commodities. Social society movement such as LBH-APIK and the National Commission on Violence Against Women continue to urge that women not only be used as attendance figures in development deliberation forum, we call musrenbang, or project socialization, but also be actively involved in decision making. Okay, next slide. Yeah. Number 3, we look at the environmental injustice. Number 1 is degraded land. Number 2, destroyer irrigation system and contaminated water. Women bear the invisible cost of economic contractions by extending their workdays to manage household, food security, and clean water, and cast a responsibility of environmental degradation. Institutional reform to transition post-mining governments from company policy to community rights. Reframing reclamation as regulatory obligation, participation structures, and building a gender-responsive, intersectional lens across the planning sector to go beyond mentalizing gender issues. Yeah. Yes, next slide. The opportunities in the future. Yeah. We can build green economic and new job. The transition to renewable energy is projected to create hundreds of thousands of new jobs in Indonesia. There are significant opportunities to provide technical training, like scaling of and upskilling to women in clean technology. Okay, woman-driven community initiative. Many pilot projects, such as Mentari or UNDP programs, have shown that when women are trained and as a technician or managers of independent solar energy units in remote village, the sustainability of energy supply is more assured. From integrated gender impact analysis, encourage mandatory in-depth gender impact analysis before an energy transition project receives national or international funding. Yes, next slide. Yeah, how to bridge the gap between macro policies, and actual implementation on the ground. The energy transition in Indonesia will not be considered just if it fails to guarantee women economic rights, living space, and meaningful participation. In the context of energy transition in Indonesia, especially post-coal mining, discussion on gender mainstreaming and the intersectional approach are crucial because the impact of mine closures of energy transitions are not felt uninformally by everyone. Gender mainstreaming status formally, Indonesia has a strong commitment to gender mainstreaming, but its implementation in the energy transition sector still faces significant gaps. Like regulatory status, according to Presidential Instruction number 9 of 2000, the energy sector in Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources has developed various gender commitment guidelines. 3 international partnerships documents such as GETP and NDC are now required to include GESI, gender equality and social inclusion indicators. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, condition in the ground reality. Formal versus substantive participation. Women are often only involved as attendance squads in the energy transition project socialization of development deliberation forum, not as strategic decision maker. Yeah, because our culture, right? Sector stereotypes. The energy and mining industry is still strongly influenced by masculine structure and culture also, yeah. So that women's representation at the managerial, technical, and macro policy level is still very minimal. And from gender responsive budget, a dedicated budget allocation to map and mitigate the impact of the energy transition on women has not yet been consistently integrated at the regional site level. Okay, now next slide. Okay, gender integration in 17th goals, Indonesia Emas. We call Indonesia Emas, Golden Indonesia. Okay, we divide from social transformation, economic transformation, management, stability and diplomation, social culture, and ecology. Okay, our ministry focus on the center to quality family, gender equality, and inclusive community. Okay, when we drag to the right column, yeah, the cross-cutting from quality environment, energy resiliency, water, food security, disaster resiliency, and climate change. Okay. There are for our goal, fair and equitable development, quality and environmentally friendly facilities and infrastructure, and sustainable development. Next slide. Okay, in Indonesia, gender inequality index now become decrease. Okay, our duty is how to make it the number strongly go down, because yeah, it's decreasing, but still slow. Only 0.067. Yeah, and this number measurement by in healthy, then child marriage, politics, and education. Also the woman, yeah, number of participation for worker. Okay, next slide. And now our duty, how to make gender development index become increasing. Yes, we need almost 15 years to change the number from 89.52 to 91.85. Yeah, we need long years. Yeah, yeah, from 2011 until 2024, and we measurement by, in health, education, and economic. Okay. Yeah, next slide. Yes, we have acceleration of gender mainstreaming implementation in national development mandates to acceleration of gender mainstreaming implementation in ministry and or institution and regional government through 7 processes like planning, budgeting, implementation, monitoring, evaluation, supervision, and reporting. So that GM, yeah, gender mainstreaming implementation can have a more direct impact through programs and policies of ministries or institutional and regional government. Okay. Yeah. Intersectional approach. Yeah. See that the person vulnerability is not only determined by gender, but by the interaction of various social identity factors such as economic class, age, geography, traditional status, and physical ability. Yeah. In Indonesia, post-coal mining transition, intersectional analysis maps the differential impact on various groups. Site level, like rural women, yeah, when mines are closed or land is converted to large-scale renewable energy project, this group are most vulnerable. They lose access to clean water, forest, which are their living space and independent food source. Widow or female as a head of family. In mining areas, mine and closure, which trigger mass layoff of male workers, often shift the economic burden entirely to women without alternative skills. In the clean energy sector, they are trapped in structural poverty. Elderly and disabled group, often overlooked in planning new energy infrastructure, for example, as energy access shift to digitalization or new technologies, they face physical and literacy barriers in the absence of inclusive assistance scheme. For young generation, facing job uncertainty, young men and women in post-mining areas need different skill and upskilling in order to enter the green economy job market. They need to be empowered. Yes,
Dr. Deva,
yes.
I will put the next slide.
I think
and if
this
could come to an end, this would be great.
Yeah. Okay, gaps, they need to be bridging because lack of intersectional disaggregated data, gender blindness in environment impact assessment. Okay, we need the bridging. Okay, opportunities. I think future opportunities in inclusive policy design, how to leveraging the momentum of national energy policy revision to explicitly incorporate intersectionality indicator to every energy transition project, community-based empowerment, continuing to discuss in preparation for the upcoming expert exchange. This third point, focus on the gaps that still exist between macro regulation and realities on the ground, as well as strategic opportunities to encouraging the design of truly inclusive and gender responsive energy transition policies in Indonesia. Okay, I think this is the last slide. Gaps in current policy. And then we have, gender blindness, limited regional bureaucracy capacity, lack of intersectionality, comprehensive approach. Yeah. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah. This is the leadership metric. Yeah. Okay. I think that is my presentation. I do hope we can discuss. And now turn on you, Sibel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your rich perspective, Dr. Deva. We have a last presentation, a last short presentation by Dr. Mia Siskavati from the University of Indonesia. And the floor is yours, please. I will share your presentation from my end, and you can try to unmute yourself already.
All right. Thank you very much. So, good morning and also afternoon, everyone. I'm Mia Siskawati from Gender Studies Graduate Program at the Graduate School of Sustainable Development, University of Indonesia. I'd like to share about this is the at least the notes from my own research on gender and intersectionality dimensions of rural communities in East Kalimantan. I will not just specifically focus on the post-mining areas, but also in other setting because we are also talking about the landscape of East Kalimantan. Next slide, please. So this is my points of discussion. And then, so started, if we are talking about rural communities in East Kalimantan, it could be they could be masyarakat adat or the alliance of masyarakat adat call themselves indigenous peoples for the international discourse, and this is the definition for them. Adat communities are communities which are living on the basis of their ancestral origin on a defined adat territory, exercise certain values and certain ideological, political, economical, and socio-cultural systems. Meanwhile, then also, of course, komunitas lokal or local community, they consist of the former masyarakat adat that no longer apply their customary a law and system, and then also there are, of course, migrant communities. I think the previous presentators already mentioned about this. The migrant communities could be voluntary. The livelihood related migrant communities in East Kalimantan, especially in the coastal areas. Many migrant communities coming from the South Sulawesi and Central Sulawesi. Another migrant communities, of course, state-sponsored transmigration projects. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the rural areas in East Kalimantan, as well as, of course, in many other areas in Kalimantan, I think we cannot avoid to talk about tenure system and I'll link with the gender dimensions as well as intersectionality dimensions. So in discussing tenure system, I adopt Anne Larson. This is a main researcher from C4, Center for International Forestry Research, who mentioned that tenure system encompasses various matters related to the regulation of who actually controls and the resources, who has access, who can utilize and manage resources, who can make decisions, who is permitted to use them, and also who actually has the rights and authority to transfer access and control for resources and how. Next slide, please. So in rural communities in East Kalimantan, actually talking about tenure system, we will of course observe that the tenure systems exist in various levels. The first level is tenure system at the nuclear family level, and then at the clan level, then at the community level, and then of course at the state level. Next slide, please. Talking about the tenure system at the family, nuclear family, and the clan level, this is actually consists of a series of mechanisms for access and control over land and other resources. Not only land, but could be trees, could be also other resources. This include inheritance mechanism, and this is how the gender dimension very strong. Not only gender dimension, but also intersectional dimensions like ethnicity, then religion, also generation, and level of education also. Another part of this tenure system at the nuclear family and the clan level is a mechanism for transferring access to and control over land and resources through marriage or other kinship mechanism. This also has a very strong gender dimension. Then the last one is position of women and men from various social groups with diverse identities in inheritance and other kinship mechanisms. This is where gender and intersectional dimensions play really important aspects and in this tenurial system. Next slide, please. Now we move to the community level. So talking about tenure system at the community level, this is consists of series of mechanisms governing the control, management, utilization of various resources within community area. And also, of course, it includes customary rules or other local regulations implemented by community regarding power, governance, and permitting for land and natural resources. At this level, I mean, the tenure system at the community level, then the gender dimension as well as intersectional dimension will influence how the position of men and women from various social groups. I mentioned various social groups could be from, for example, from the lower social group, from middle or upper social group. It will very different. So actually, this is how it is really important. Next slide, please. And then the other customary system, tenurial system is a state land tenure system or state actually resource tenure system. And we already know that in Indonesia, this is the category is there are two categories of land: state forest lands and the lands for other purpose or APL. So mining, mining areas under the land for other purpose. This is managed by the Ministry of Agrarian and Spatial Affairs. So we are talking about post mining areas. We're talking about this is a 30% of the total lands in Indonesia. So yeah, and I'm talking about the landscape because I'm not only focusing on the 30%, because the livelihood of communities in surrounding areas that have licenses of mining, including coal mining, actually also affected by the tenure system that apply at the state forest lands. Next slide, please. So this is just an illustration. Of course, not only East Kalimantan, but this is like just an illustration of how the concessions of the natural resources using the state land tenure systems. Like then this is in certain or even many areas is conflicting with the communal systems at the community level and as well as at the nucleus and also clan level. Next slide, please. So this is just giving you the idea that later when we are talking about the post-mining activities, bear in mind that we are not only handling with the communities that depend on their livelihoods from the mining activities, but also actually already affected by the problems, agrarian conflict problems in the landscape. So the agrarian conflict not only then creating a problem of the conflicts, but environmental destruction and socio-ecological crisis, especially because industrial scale natural resources extraction, including mining, logging, industrial scale plantation, contribute to agrarian conflict, and of course then environmental degradation. And all of them have strong gender dimensions that intersect with socio-cultural, economic, and political dimensions. Next slide, please. Then we will be, of course, then also seeing the socio-cultural impacts. Rural communities, many villages who lost their lands and livelihood resources have turned into casual workers in extractive industries. Say, for example, in the area where the mining, including coal mining, exists. So usually the job for the women very limited, but the women will search for like casual work and another extractive industries nearby, including palm oil. Next slide, please. Then, of course, then environmental degradation then also contribute to rural women further vulnerabilities, yeah, because it's like then they are actually disproportionately affected. Next slide, please. I'll talk a bit more about the position of women, vulnerable and marginalized groups within agrarian conflict, environmental destruction, and socio-ecological crisis. Of course, the differentiated impacts of agrarian conflict, environmental degradation, as well as climate crisis nowadays, and ecological disaster on women from various social groups, including, of course, of different socio-economic groups within the community. This is like really like differentiated impacts. And then, of course, this is already like my own research as well as some other research show that environmental destruction and socio-ecological crisis perpetuate and encourage violations of women's human rights as well as gender-based violence in the area. And the question is now the policies and programs to address environmental problems and socio-ecological crisis, including nowadays now that we are talking like the policies and program as well as plan intervention on the post-mining, post-coal mining activities for the just energy transition is like the key questions. Where are the women, vulnerable groups, and marginal groups positioned in policy as well as programs or intervention? Whose voices are most heard? So next slide, please. This is just like then the organizer asked me also talking about local knowledge. So I have to say, sadly, the local knowledge on spatial and natural resources management, they're very strong in the past, has been degrading due to the natural resources destruction and agrarian conflict. And then what is now the reality is women knowledge is related to local food, local edible plants, and traditional medicinal plants has also been degrading, particularly among younger generation. That actually create problems of food security because they really depend on the food coming from outside and from outside the area. And for certain villages that really there's a problem with the like a connection to the village, then it will create serious problems. Next slide, please. This is now talking about local institutions. So customary institutions in certain communities still play critical roles, but in other areas, their existence as well as their roles are no longer strong. And also, in addition, if they are still exist, these customary institutions are mostly dominated by men. Village governments and village parliaments in many areas also dominated and at the same time have also limited capacities. Meanwhile, state-sponsored women organizations such as PKK, KWT is Women's Farmers Group, exists but have limited activities. And other village-based organizations such as Karang Taruna or youth organization exists, but again, have very limited activities. Next slide, please. Just very few slides after this. So lessons learned from my ongoing research and other research that's been in East Kalimantan. So a free prior informed consent or FPIC needs to be applied since the very beginning of research activities. So although we are going to do research not in the customary community or other communities, but just migrant communities, we still have to apply FPIC procedures. And then the next lessons learned is it is critical for any social research and community engagement to pay attention on gender dimension with intersectional approach, like by including dimensions of ethnicity, class, religion, generation or age, education level, and occupation, as well as status of marriage, so that we could pay attention on the women head of the households, etc. Also, research and community engagement needs to adopt gender responsive and inclusive approach. Next slide, please. This is the lessons learned from community engagement. Again, same like research, the FPIC need to be applied since the very beginning. And then also we need to really make sure about genuine and substantive participation of women and also genuine participation of vulnerable and marginalized groups within the communities. For example, people with disabilities, women head of the households, especially women head of the household from the lower social class, as well as other marginalized groups within the communities. And then this is important, rural women, vulnerable and marginalized groups within communities should become subject of decision making about themselves, their homeland, or their customary territory. Next slide, please. This is almost the last. So talking about participation, we have to really think that there's a typology of participation. So hopefully, like any plan or intervention on the post coal mining activities for the just energy transition will consider about the typology of participation. This is from Bina Agarwal. So we're not only just like happy with the nominal participation, passive participation, or just consultative participation, but we will, I hope we can encourage active participation and empowering participation. Next slide, please. It's almost done. This is just like a reflection on the community engagement about the systemic change for rural women empowering. This is also applied for East Kalimantan, that where I think it is better not only just think about the empowerment at the individual level through the formal approach, but also I think we need to also consider the systemic change as well as the informal process, especially addressing also informal sociocultural norms and exclusionary practices, not only exclusion for the women, but could also be exclusion of the men from the lower social class, for example, men with disabilities or any other vulnerable and marginalized groups. I think that's my last slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mia. And I'm very, very sorry for the time. We passed the time, but nevertheless, I'm very grateful for all the questions that you just wrote in the Q&A section. Some of them could be replied directly by the researchers and the colleagues. And maybe just to make like a little bit this feeling of, to give this feeling of a webinar, I just put one question here, and Mia, we are happy to take this question and to respond, because we are talking about East Kalimantan and this region itself as a very important coal hub. It has an ambition of green development and economic diversification plans, but can these transformations become genuinely inclusive rather than reproducing existing gender inequalities, for example?
I think if you see the policies and program of East Kalimantan at the provincial level and also at the district level, some districts, they're quite like strong on the paper, but the challenge, I think, is on the ground. So later, the application of the intervention at the site level, that's the key. So the key is, I think, is not only just involving, but this is my suggestion, applying community organizing, including the organizing of the women as well as vulnerable and marginalized groups. So organizing so that they not only be having capacity, but they will be having the critical awareness as well as have capacity, as well as, of course, understanding that delivering their voices at their own setting, village governments, or at the of course maybe can be also going up to the district government is very key. So that when the project or intervention ends, they could continue working together with the village government, with the company or any institution that will do the post mining activities. That's my suggestion.
Thank you very much for your insightful perspective. I know this is a very interesting topic and we could discuss more. I encourage all the participants from today to contact also bilaterally the panelists via mail, try to have more this conversation, to broaden more the discussion on gender and on intersectionality. Unfortunately, our time is over, but I would like to thank again all the panelists, all the participants, the audience, my technical support team, Cecilia and Timon, for your support. And the aim was basically to explore critical intersections of gender, governance, and institutional reforms in the coal transition, and actually a just transition. It's not about only to leaving coal behind, but is about choosing what and whom we move towards. And with these words, I would like to thank you again, and I wish you a very good day. See you again.
Thank you.